Sometimes you really feel for Joe Burrow. He had a bad day at a press conference over a month ago and comes back, goes to the Pro Bowl with his buddies, and now he's asked again. Are you happy, Joe? Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network in the land. He's James Rapien. I'm Jake Liscow. We're your hosts of the Locked On Bengals podcast, covering your Cincinnati Bengals going all the way back to 2016, your best, consistent, everyday, one-stop shop for all things Bengals on the internet. And the everydayers know it. Shout out to all of you who make Locked On Bengals part of your everyday routine, and all of you who make us your first listen. Today, well, the Pro Bowl games occurred on Tuesday night. You might have missed it. It didn't seem to have a terribly large audience from what I could tell, James, but Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Flacco were out there doing their thing and filling up the box score for the AFC and what eventually turned into a huge comeback win for the NFC in a weird turn of events in the second half. But part of that included Joe Burrow being asked on the sideline again, and we're at least a month removed now, right? Are you happy, Joe? Amongst people making up ridiculous trade scenarios and all these things. I guess this is just something that Bengals fans have to live with at this point. And again, the everydayers have heard us talk about this a ton. If you are an everydayer and you're interested in expanding what your level of engagement is with the Locked On Bengals podcast community, you want to get into a consistently available Locked On Bengals everydayer chat, you can check out the Everydayer Club. You also get an ad-free audio version of the podcast. You can check that out at lockedonbengals.supercast.com for those details. But James, were you surprised at all? The one interview that we got with Joe Burrow, and I think they talked to Jamar Chase. I'm sure they talked to T. Higgins. Those guys were there for the practices, so a little bit more documentation around their presence in California for the Pro Bowl. But we get one interview with Joe Burrow, and I think Butch talked to him after the game too. But one on TV, and the one question that goes out and there's clips of is, are you really happy in Cincinnati, Joe?
I think it's perfect. I think that's the only question that really needed to be asked. Outside of, like, I would wonder, and you saw that scramble on the first drive. He scrambles for the touchdown. It's the throwback. It's not open. Does, like, how's the toe doing? You wearing that plate? Like, those are things I would ask, which he would, I'm sure, love to answer. But outside of that, from a national standpoint, what is the narrative around Joe? It is he happy? And I don't think it's just because of that press conference. I think in Joe's mind, it's that. I think when you mix the press conference on his birthday, when before I had even went to Paycor Stadium, I wrote, man, clock's ticking. Joe's 29. They're going to miss the playoffs for a third straight year, all of those things. And then we go into that press conference and he's talking about being happy and everything that goes into playing. And it opened up the door even more. But there's been speculation about Joe Burrow. There will continue to be speculation about Joe Burrow. And there's one main reason why. Because he's like a top 3 quarterback on the planet. And maybe he's 1 for you. Maybe he's 2. Maybe he's 3. I've had some say he's 6 or 7 or whatever. Even then, it's really, really hard to find. There's one other team in the division in the past decade that's had it. And that's Lamar Jackson. In the past decade. Like, that's a long time for teams that are considered well run with the Steelers and obviously the Ravens to look at it that way. So it's hard. It's hard to find guys like him. And so 1, I get the question. 2, I love the answer. And I loved how, because everything gets psychoanalyzed and looked at and put through a fine tooth comb when it comes to everything Joe Burrow says. And I'm part of that. But he's like, yeah, man, I was just having a bad day, which everybody can relate to. Everydayer can relate to. You can relate to it. I can relate to it. You've seen me when I'm super annoyed. Like, man, I can't believe whatever happened today. And then we got to do the show. And no one knows that when we're doing the show, why I'm in a bad mood. You might know. Sometimes you might not know. But guess what? We're all human. And so That's all that was that day. And I think that is the case, by the way, behind the scenes in that moment. I think that's all it was. It wasn't, oh my God, Joe's unhappy and he wants out of here and all of those things. But that's where the narrative will go when Joe does things like that, because he's one of the elite football players on the planet.
And there's just the entire national context around the Bengals and the way the Bengals are covered, especially when things aren't going well. I mean, I wonder what kind of sustained run of success they would have to have for any of that to change. I guess it changed a little bit during the Andy Dalton 5 straight playoff run years where.
Not really, though. I agree with you.
But like there was some conversation, about like, oh, they're drafting well, and now suddenly the Bengals are doing everything the right way. But like even that was pretty surface level, right? The people that cover the things that the Bengals haven't changed are on this podcast, and some of the other local journalists and content creators do this to some degree as well. So I'm not going to say it's only us, but the people that are talking about like, yeah, well, the way they structure contracts hasn't changed ever. They've never done a restructure. Like these are things that I've said, and that these are things that we've said on this podcast, but it's not like that bit is widely covered. And so the national pendulum on the Bengals is really how well have they been doing for how long? When the Bengals went to 2 straight AFC championship games and won one of them, the narrative was different. And since then, they've missed the playoffs 3 years in a row. So the narrative has gone with that. And I mean, I think you even see that with the Patriots, right? Like Tom Brady leaves the Patriots, Bill Belichick leaves the Patriots, and suddenly the Patriots are kind of a punchline until they figure things out. And their downside was much shorter, but like the national media is always going to go that way where they're reacting to these short-term trends. We're always reacting to the long-term trends. That's why you're with us here on Locked On Bengals. And I think this is just a reality of the Joe Burrow era. And that is going to be part of the scrutiny that you deal with when Joe Burrow is your quarterback, because he is a superstar that is at this height that you haven't really had in Cincinnati. And the expectations are what they are because you made that Super Bowl. You made that second AFC championship game with him as your quarterback, and now you've fallen so short of expectations. So additional spotlight on the Bengals because of those guys and because of Joe, but also because of, I think, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins' presence on the team and the star power they have on offense and the expectations that go along with that. But one thing that stood out to me, James, as you were discussing this and how, the other teams in the division haven't had it, it just goes to show that, yeah, those teams are still considered well-run teams. Nobody in the stretch of the Steelers winning no meaningful games, getting to the playoffs and then losing, did anyone really outside of Pittsburgh? And I know Pittsburgh journalists and Pittsburgh creators have been critical of Pittsburgh for sticking with Mike Tomlin for so long, for example. Mm-hmm. But outside of Pittsburgh, it's been, yeah, Pittsburgh is a well-run organization. Yeah, Baltimore's a well-run organization. Part of that is that they're putting together competent teams despite limitations elsewhere on the roster. And that's why Pittsburgh has been able to win all the games they've won. If the Bengals were able to build their team up the way Pittsburgh was able to build around a quarterback that was lacking, given similar financial restraints in terms of long-term trends, but more money to play with perhaps because they're paying less to their quarterback. But the development that you see time over time in Pittsburgh, right? Like if the Bengals have that on the defensive side of the ball, they're talking about playoff games the last few years, not talking about falling so short of expectations. So that it just came to mind as you were talking about it, James, the importance of building the team and not just having Joe Burrow. Like you need to do more than just having the quarterback.
Well, they went 1-8. They are allowed to go 1-8 with me at quarterback, but not 1-8 because Joe Burrow is out. Like that's unacceptable. They're like Brian Callahan got fired because he was 1-8 in Tennessee or whatever it was, right? Like they went 1-8. It was the Cardinals 1-8 during that same stretch. The Titans 1-8, and Callahan was fired during that. Gannon fired at the end of the season, and a lifeless Cardinals team came to Paycor, and the Bengals kicked the snot out of them. And then this Bengals team. And so you're right. You got to be able to win some games if Joe's nicked up or if you have this deficiency or this weakness, because guess what? There isn't a perfect roster. We're going to see 2 teams play in Super Bowl 60 that aren't perfect rosters. Sam Darnold isn't an elite quarterback. Drake May's been awful in the playoffs, even though I think he has a chance to be one of those elite quarterbacks. And yet both teams won and they're playing for a championship on Sunday. I have some thoughts on Joe, on the national narrative, on that perception that you're talking about, and why it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Speaking of Super Bowl 60, I can't think of a better way, Jake, to spice up Super Bowl 60 than to get to FanDuel right now, because FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of all of the action, and they have a special Super Bowl offer for you. Whether you're backing the favorite in the Seahawks, riding with the underdog Patriots, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where plays and stats turn into storylines. Every snap feels bigger. You're going to be waiting, well, anxiously, especially if you get with FanDuel, because right now, if you're a new customer, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count right now. Throw $5 on one of these NBA games and then get that $200 in bonus bets for Super Bowl 60. Do it right now with FanDuel at FanDuel.com, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60.
Sometimes it can be hard to find a doctor. It can be harder to find a good doctor, like finding a diamond in the rough. You want someone who's in network, nearby, has availability, and a doctor who listens and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. That kind of doctor does exist, and finding them is actually easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love without all the hassle. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers, over 50 states, covering over 200 specialties from primary care and dentistry to dermatology and eye care. It makes the process simple. ZocDoc lets you search by specialty or symptom, lets you build a care team that works for you. Stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message.
The other thing, Jake, that's important to remember, when you have one of these elite players, there's always going to be speculation that they're unhappy. And Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee, it's very similar to that. There's been speculation for years and years and years and years. Oh my God, he's moving out of Milwaukee, going to move out of Milwaukee. He might be traded by the time people hear this or watch this. And the NFL, from a quarterback standpoint, I think is becoming more like the NBA. Not fully. There's 53 guys on a roster. It's not a 15-man roster, 10-man rotation. It's much different in the NBA from that perspective. But like the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes, the true stars in the league, they do have power. And that's part of it. What does Joe think? I've often referred to him as the most important man in the building at Paycor. And man, woman, doesn't matter. Most important person in the building. And it's true, because it's really, really hard to find that. You can find owners and coaches and receivers and offensive linemen. It's really, really hard to find a guy of Joe's skill set and talent level and leadership ability and everything that he brings. And so when you have that and you're in a market that isn't known for all of its winning, right? If Joe Burrow's in New England, we're not talking about this, even though from a true spend standpoint, the Bengals would be like, we've spent like New England has over the past decade. We've done that. We didn't do it last offseason, but overall we've done that. That's what they would say. And yet the perceptions are much, much different. Why? Well, because one's won, one hasn't. And so that's the ultimate thing. If you win with Joe, all of this is over. All of this ends, and you got to consistently do it. And they haven't. They've missed the playoffs more than they've made the playoffs, which is unacceptable. I don't care if Joe stubs his toe, misses some time. And I'm obviously downplaying a serious toe injury. You got to be able to overcome it. And the good organizations, the good teams would. The Bengals haven't been good. And that's where the pressure comes now, is Joe might be happy and saying, oh yeah, I'm happy in Cincinnati. And he is, I believe, happy in Cincinnati. But he's not going to be happy forever because he wants to win. And you need to give him what he needs to realistically win and go out there and compete for championships.
Well, it does go back to what Duke Tobin said, that it isn't just Joe. And I'm not agreeing with Duke Tobin here. I don't think downplaying Joe's importance was a good idea, but he wasn't entirely wrong when he said that, right? Like, yeah, quarterbacks definitely drive this league, but we've seen what happens when the team isn't good enough. Because last year, going back to 2024, Joe was healthy, offense was great, wasn't good enough. You need to be good enough to overcome the bits of adversity you have. You need to find ways to close games. We talked about this on the squad show yesterday. The Bengals defense, the Bengals team closed out one close game. It was in week 1. The defense gets a stop, and the Browns can't drive. And then in week 2, you get all the crazy interceptions and fourth down stops against Jackson. I mean, that's just a crazy game that happens, and maybe you can credit them for that too. But then they didn't close it clean. So there's all these issues that the Bengals had to fix this offseason to do right by Joe, but also right by the organization, right? Because Joe isn't there forever. You're right. He gives them their best chance to win right now. But you have to build the team. It's still a team sport, and it's going to be the same conversation that we're talking about when we get to the salary cap, and we're going to talk about the amount of money they can spend and how many starters they can afford to pay on the defensive side of the ball in free agency. And we look forward to their absolute lack of contract commitments in 2027 that will obviously change this offseason, but they have a lot of work to do because they have some guys that are awesome, right? We saw that during the Pro Bowl games. Just to touch on the Pro Bowl flag game, we saw Jamar Chase scoop a pick six a foot off the turf with one hand and take it the other way when he got out there and played defense. We saw what T and Jamar could do as receivers. We heard these other players talk about how special those guys are. And they put on a bit of a show. I mean, what was it? They were involved in 40 of the AFC's first 52 points or something like that. Bengals players. I think I saw the stat. I think Jeff Hobson had that one because he's out there, of course, covering it. He's there talking to those guys. And I had a pretty fun story about it at Bengals.com. A lot of fun quotes in there, but got to build the team around those guys because those guys are special. You have some special players. Like Duke said, you just got to build the whole team. You can't have one side of the ball that's such a zero as it has been for the last couple of years.
Yep. Yeah. And that's it. And that's where the pressure is they can be a championship level team with their stars, but they have to fill out the roster. They failed at it last offseason. Last offseason was a complete failure. I honestly, I can't believe, and we said it. I remember there were people that would reach out like, man, you're being so negative. And it's like, well, and then you see the results. And it wasn't just Joe got hurt. They lost to the Browns in the final week of the season. Embarrassing. That should never happen. It should never have happened. I don't care if Shedeur Sanders is a Pro Bowler throwing touchdowns and all those. I don't care. So, yeah, I think it's hopefully a reminder. Like Joe Burrow, yeah, he's happy, but you better tick, tick, tick. You better do what you need to do. And if you do that, well, then let's see what Zac Taylor's made of. And I think that's part of it here. I think Joe Burrow behind the scenes was probably like, what do you expect Zac to do? What do you expect Al to do? What do you expect these guys to do when there's clearly a lack of talent, like glaring holes, like not just weaknesses, glaring holes that need to be filled. And so we'll finish things up with talking about Zac Taylor and his return for year 8. 8, Jake. Think about that. That's a lot. We'll do that coming up next.
This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, I'm going to refrain from making a joke about the Bengals here. You know how important it is to get it right. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, you can trust Indeed sponsored jobs. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. You can stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites by using Indeed's sponsored jobs. That'll put your post on the top of the page, helps you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs make sure that post is available to the people who are the best match for your role, and that will make all the difference. Sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. You can spend time interviewing the candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get $75 in sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you're hiring, do it the right way with Indeed.
It's a new year and new systems. This time is when we look a lot of the messier parts of how we run our business. And there has to be a better way, and there is, because Quo is here for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Maybe Zac Taylor, speaking of him, should use Quo to communicate with Joe. That way they don't have any delay of games or burn timeouts. Just throwing it out there. But the point is your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, and nothing gets missed with Quo. And everyone sees the full conversation thread, which keeps replies faster, more personal. And it's no surprise that Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to Quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's Quo.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers.
James, Zac Taylor, and I share an anniversary.
Oh,
Everydayers,
congratulations.
know about this one. Thank you.
Oh.
Zach and I started the jobs on the same day. I hope to outlast Zach. But actually, you know what? If Zach manages to outlast me, something will have gone very right in Cincinnati, or very wrong for me. Anyway, I hope it's a very right category. Either way. Zac Taylor has been the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals for 7 years.
Yeah, he's entering his 8th year now.
Officially the same day I started doing this podcast. That's the shared anniversary. And always like to reflect on this day when this anniversary comes up, about how things have been going in the Zac Taylor era.
Yeah. It's wild to think. I mean, it feels, I remember, so I obviously wasn't covering the team day to day then. And I just left Cincinnati a few weeks prior, but I remember watching his introductory news conference. It was after the Super Bowl, and it was getting a lift in. Shocker for those that wonder, but I was like, wonder how it's going to go. And you know what's funny? They went to Seattle that week 1, and I was like, wow. I was like, they got John Ross going. They should have won that game. Are they good? And then week 2 was the 49ers game, and it was like, no, they're not good. It was that quick. Well, you never know. It's like, oh, well, this young offensive mind like gets more out of Andy and then breathes new life into this offense. And they go to Seattle, and they should have won, and they had Russell Wilson on the ropes. And then they were beaten into reality there, that week 2 game at home against the 49ers. But yeah, it's been wild. Like, if you would have told everyone that day that he got hired 7 years ago, hey, you're going to go to a Super Bowl, you're going to go to an AFC championship game, you're going to win a couple division titles, everyone would have signed up for it. At the same time, when you look at it now objectively, it's like, well, Joe was everything you could have wanted and then some. You lost enough to get him, and Joe wasn't even on the, certainly not first, second, third round radar, probably late day 3 radar for the 2020 draft when Zach was hired. This was the Tua Bowl. This was like, oh, Tua Tagovailoa, maybe Justin Herbert. But Joe Burrow burst onto the scene. So it shows how quickly things can change. And man, it feels like, and it was years ago, but ages ago since Zach was hired.
The year that he benched Andy Dalton on his birthday, Ryan Finley played 3 games.
Yeah.
I mean, going back, Ryan Finley.
Ryan Finley should have played out the season. I know they wanted to win a game or two. They got lucky, man. They got lucky. They didn't cost themselves. That Miami comeback?
That Miami game was actually crazy. I mean,
crazy.
It's something that we could, I guess, reflect on every year at this time. the genesis of the success of the Joe Burrow era, the Zac Taylor coaching tenure since his tenure in Cincinnati goes back to that game, and how different things could be if Justin Herbert were the pick instead of Joe Burrow, because the Bengals weren't picking first overall. And we do believe that that's what they would have done. But what a roller coaster it's been for Zac Taylor, a guy that he's 5-2 in the playoffs, right?
Yep.
Got one of the better playoff winning percentages of active coaches, because he's only coached in 7 playoff games. But outside of those 2 years, 2-14, 4-11, 9-8, 9-8, 6-11, well below 500. If you get rid of the 22-11 record he had in the 2 years where they made it to the playoffs and made the playoff push, and obviously you don't get rid of those years happened, and they were 9-8 in the following 2 years. But Zach, there's a reason, I guess, upon reflection, this year's look back is like, there's a reason we were talking about the Bengals moving on at head coach this offseason. I think any other team, Zach doesn't get this much rope. And you saw that with Brian Callahan in Tennessee this year. We've talked about that twice now. Sorry, Brian, as a great example of the impatience of most NFL teams. The Bengals were rewarded by getting to the Super Bowl the next year, and now they have to be hoping that their patience will again be rewarded. I think that's the first time in Mike Brown's ownership that he has been rewarded for holding on to a coach that extra year. And they go to the playoffs and they go to the AFC Championship game. And now we see this patience once again. And they're hoping that, along with some good moves in the offseason, that patience pays off. Because, to be honest, man, like I know some people out there did, but like the expectations weren't high after 2020. It was like, man, hope they figure this thing out with Joe Burrow and they don't squander this guy because he's torn his ACL as a rookie. And now it's again, expectations very low going into 2026.
Well, I mean, I think the perception's changed. I wouldn't be shocked if we look at FanDuel in a month and the Bengals are the favorite in the division.
That'd be interesting.
But from an odds standpoint, because they have Joe, by the way, I mean, it just starts there. I think what Mike Brown is thinking is, hey, I think Zach is a good head coach. We had clear issues that we're working through to solve. Let's solve them. And it's eerily similar from a confidence standpoint to what he did, the press conference from hell in 2010 after the 2010 season, which is the biggest disappointment that I've ever had, at least in a Bengals team. After 2009, 2010, you think they're really about to go off, and the train never gets moving, and they're awful. And that's the TO year. And that's the year where, after that, Carson Palmer retires. Mike Brown sticks with Marvin, trades Chad, like things really change, but Marvin stays. And Mike would say, oh, well, we went to 5 straight we made 5 straight playoff appearances. But then he was patient again with Marvin after the 2015 debacle, and they didn't go to the playoffs again. That roster was deteriorating. Zach told you that. And so that's why they completely flipped things in 19 and 20. And in 21, they had so many different faces. That's what they're doing, is they're going through a transition period. The thing that sucks is you have Joe, you have Jamar, and you have T, and the clock is ticking. And you have a coach that, whether it's fair, whether it's not fair, is 52-63-1. So you can be 5-2 in the playoffs. You're 52-63-1. And that has to change. Like he should be really close to 500 after the 2026 season if he's going to keep his job, or his overall record. You got to be 7-8 games over 500. And that would be, ideal. And the Bengals have never done that. They've never won 13 games in a season. So what better way to do it than do it in 2026?
The expectation really should be playoffs or bust for this coaching staff.
I agree. It better be.
I looked, because you mentioned it, Super Bowl 2027 futures, and the Bengals are 16th, if I can count. And
right,
that's
in the middle.
Question. I don't know if I can count or not, but behind teams
You're supposed to be able to be the guy that can count. I'm trench man. You're the counting man.
Counting man. Not quite as not quite as catchy. Behind the Bears, behind
Math
the
man?
Texans, behind the
Math man.
Jags, behind the Broncos,
Ugh.
behind the 49ers, Patriots, Chiefs, Lions, Eagles. That one's surprising. Chargers, Packers, Bills, Ravens, Rams, Seahawks. That's the descending order from the Bengals to the Seahawks.
The
are
Rams
currently
that
favored.
low?
No,
I
the
bet
Rams are
that's
second.
Oh, you went low.
I counted from the Bengals up to the top.
Got
It
it.
goes Seahawks, Rams, Ravens, Bills, Packers, Chargers, Eagles, Lions, Chiefs, Patriots.
Chiefs. Interesting. I'm surprised the Patriots are that low. I'm kind of surprised the Chiefs are that low because
I think
you could find
probably,
a Mahomes injury. I get it.
Yeah, they're probably waiting to see how Mahomes responds to the injury. Well, this is going to change a lot, but that's what it is right now. I was curious because you mentioned it. We'll see what it is in a month. We'll see what it looks like in a month. But obviously, I think national media, national perspective, national perception, and the odds makers, the Bengals have a lot to do to get back in their good graces and our good graces, quite frankly, this offseason. And
that's right. That's right.
Continue to have you
Make us
here.
happy. Make us happy, not just Joe. Make us happy, damn it.
That's the most important thing. You got to satisfy the trench man this offseason, Bengals. Until next time, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.